fueling that ego, that part of you that's, you think you need that, but...
Well, you do need ego to survive, but we've kind of started to worship it as a means to an end in of itself, and it takes up so much of our living time.
I need to become more confident. So the next junction was to get myself into MMA and to martial arts, and we spoke with Rupert about that the reason we are here is simply because I started...
When there was a direct threat to your survival, like thousands of years ago, now I feel like there's threat to those survival instincts, but they're kind of different in a way.
It's more persistent,
Yeah.
Stress on being in a trance. It's not something that's unusual. You're always in trance. Always in trance. You're never out of trance because you're always running a program.
Yeah, we're thinking of launching a retreat, some sort of like a self-development retreat.
Okay.
So 20-30 people. We're still brainstorming of ideas what we could bring into that retreat. Some sort of maybe jiu-jitsu aspect.
I think, yeah, there's definitely like an element of where trying to cultivate awareness towards people where I suppose we're a platform where people can watch and sort of think about what it is that I can do to sort of maybe better my mental health, or for those that may be going through sort of it's kind of trying to open up a bit more of a realistic conversation about I don't know, even today, like we've recorded a podcast about sort of anxiety and how that might feel and ways in which you might want to treat that if you're going through that period of uncertainty. And I think it's just kind of trying to create a bit more of an awareness online that's positive and not so much just like, I don't know, when you see online, it tends to be like a lot of people being like boasting or look at me, but actually trying to focus more content on things like we're all human really at the end of the day. We're all going to feel these kinds of things.
And what's the age group you're thinking?
Like we're thinking about between 20 to like 35, I would say. Like Gen Z, millennials, we're touching on that. I mean, we're trying to reach everyone as much as well, but we can't help everyone, I guess.
Yeah.
So when we look at the audience age on the platforms, is usually
I guess it'd also be who can
20s,
relate
To
the you guys and the
exactly
ideas that you're kind of putting across.
Yeah, we have an episode on men's mental health as well, and I think we'll try to push that. We'll try to put more eyes onto men's mental health on November, especially because that's a Movember. Yeah, that's Stumpy what does as well. Yeah. So that's the idea of launching a retreat next year in November for people to actually get together and well, we'll see. We'll still raise something that's very early.
I think it's good to have a GPS direction on it, but obviously you can go off on adventures off the beaten track.
Yeah, and I think it's just trying to create more of it, because like we've had people even be like, this has been like a really nice thing to listen to, or this has helped me, and that's been like really nice to hear. Yeah, because I think it's definitely been a part of our journey, trying to sort of how can we be better people and how can we spread a bit more love in that respect.
But as well, we're not trying to come from this side that like we know how to do, so we're giving you advice. We're just simply trying to document what helped for us. Try implementing this, and I guess bringing guests like yourself is providing a different perspective on the look of life in general. Like you see the life through jiu-jitsu, and I feel that's amazing. Like this.
But jiu-jitsu is part of how I see
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a few other bits and bobs that have come across along the way for sure. Like the hypnosis, all the NLP hypnotherapy training and stuff like that. That was because the jiu-jitsu really is about, for me, it's more about self-development and self-defense. So the question of, my GPS is slightly set differently to, somebody wants to win the ADCC finals or whatever that is, which, I think people can appreciate, but it's obviously a very rare event to achieve something like that. Whereas I think everybody can come to jiu-jitsu and develop their sense of self and that relationship between them and themselves through just time on the floor and just asking themselves tough questions.
Like we were having this discussion earlier where we were like, jiu-jitsu, even in the short time where I've sort of been on the mats, it's like I've walked out feeling a lot better than I ever walked in. And sometimes it hasn't just been about doing the exercise and learning the moves. Like even when you're doing past the guard or even in the beginning sessions, you're asking someone like, how's your day been? And then all of a sudden, like the more relationship you build with someone, like you were saying, when even with you and Charlie during the time that you've known each other,
we always drilled together with Charlie.
It was like something where it's like, yeah, my day's been like this or my day's been like that, and it's like, oh well, elaborate on that, and then you sort of, it feels very much like a safe and open space to kind of share a bit of that.
I mean, for me, I think kindness is really important. You know, I hope that's what I demonstrate to my guys and girls. And it's a fulcrum of how we integrate with each other, but also how then what we take out. And as you say, about spreading the love, that's, it really is about that. Whereas I think if you've got quite a terse environment, that's good for certain outcomes and certain people, but it's not good for everybody.
But I guess that's, you said kindness is very important, but I guess you can see that in your gym because you are the leader of that gym, and these are the type of people you attract. So I haven't met a person at a jiu-jitsu gym that was rude to me in a way. All of them are very, like, I made one of my best friends in jiu-jitsu. Like all of my friends, my best friends are from jiu-jitsu right now. So I guess the person you trying to what you're trying to project, these people you naturally attract.
There's definitely a resonance. Do you know what I mean? And there's definitely people that come through that door. I mean, I had somebody come in. This girl came in the other week, and she's kind of, because obviously it's not in a plush environment. It's in a community centre. We put the mats out and this and that. And she turned up, and I could see like there was a slightly disturbed look on her face, and she was like, "Oh, I've parked my bike outside. I'm just going to go and get it." And as she went out, I'm like, "I'm not seeing you again. You're not coming back through that door." Do you know what I mean? Which is fair, Again, it's if it's not right for her.
Exactly.
Hey guys, thank you so much for making it this far into the podcast. If you have any feedback, then please let us know, as we always want to make this podcast better. So hearing from you is always a pleasure. Please subscribe to all of our platforms. Get involved at Triangle Theory. If you've got any comments or if you want to share any topics that you think that me and Conrad would like to talk about, then please get involved. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I think what really captivated me about sort of being sort of a part of this gym, so it's like it's not trying to be this polished version of anything. It's come here with an open space and an open mindset and see if you take to it. And absolutely. It's like we're not going to fundamentally change what jiu-jitsu is to be anything or any, and I think that's really nice, especially in a city like any city where you've got such a mixture of people and I think that's a really special thing, and that's what captivated me straight away. Was like, I don't see anyone or anything or anything about this gym that's trying to be something that it's not. It's very like, come with an open mind and see what you take from it. You might come back, you might not, and that's okay. And that kind of was really inviting, especially like straight off the bat.
Well, I think it's like if you resonate with it, then you're going to feel that comfort. Of course, and there's guys that want more of that competition, more like a kind of specific goals for themselves, and that it might not be right for them. But if they're chasing that, although our guys go to competition and do really well, do you know what I mean? So it might be the fact that their perception is they require that kind of sensei. Shouty, kind of pissed off dude, which I can be at times. Obviously, you've seen me produce that, but that's kind of managing the room to some degree. But that's not my my general mode of operation.
Was there like sort of being in the gyms in your jiu-jitsu journey, was there creating sort of your space at Carlson Gracie and Clapham, did you sort of want to create that atmosphere? Was that something that you sort of knew that you wanted?
I wanted to go and play my tunes and have a laugh.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Just
so stick my James Brown on or whatever, whatever comes out of that thing. Yeah, I mean, I'm a product of the rave generation. And being a hairdresser, so music's always been really important for me. So yeah, if you can hang with that, that's great. If you want something else, you're expecting something else. If you're expecting a more sort of military vibe, then that'll be somewhere else.
Yeah.
And good luck finding it. I hope you do find it. But yeah, as my granddad used to say, horses for courses. You don't put a steeples like on the flats. You don't put a particular horse that's not run it kind of. It's not going to function in that environment. It's got to go to where it's good. So yeah, it's kind of like that. So I don't chase anybody if they don't call them up. Did you like it?
Yeah.
It's obvious if they do because they'll recontact us or whatever. Yeah, so I don't want to really pull anybody in that's not feeling the vibe.
And again, it's I think a lot of it's just kind of having fun in there,
That's it. I mean, if you're having fun, you're going to be learning and you're going to be enjoying the environment, or at least you're more likely to come back, and the learning process and the uptake of information will happen intrinsically. But yeah, I think you've got to enjoy that. I mean, that's my thing. I've been doing martial arts since 84, 85, 86, something like that. And I wouldn't, if I stopped enjoying it, I would stop it tomorrow. But it's still giving, and I'm still not only enjoying the thing, but I'm still improving. I'm still evolving my game. I don't see it as there's an end to that.
Doesn't feel like a chore, does it?
No, not at all. No, it feels it feels like it's exciting. It's still fresh.
Yeah.
I went to class the week before last. My coach Dickie was taking that particular class. I haven't seen him for ages, and we got to roll. I hadn't possibly rolled with him for 2 years.
Wow.
And just again rehabbing that experience was just so much fun, and just getting my ass kicked. Do you know what I mean? It's just being put. And I came away with some more information, more details. And okay, I'm going to try that next time. And it's kind of an open question.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say, like, it kind of removes the level of expectation you have on yourself, because I think the moment that you start putting, I don't know, for me, like putting that expectation that you should be at this space or be at this place, it kind of removes the enjoyment away from it, right?
Yeah, so if that's that, if it's a chore, if it's a task, I mean, you have to have some element of motivation to go, right? But everybody likes a party. Do you know what I mean? So if I can make my gym like an ongoing party, like a sort of Monday to Saturday rave, where we're, it's kind of, but we're practicing jiu-jitsu. It's kind of, it's thrilling from that perspective.
I had many times when I went to your gym, not because I particularly wanted to do jiu-jitsu, but I just wanted to see my friends.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a party environment almost, where I'm not actually going to exercise. I'm just going to meet my mates.
I mean, we don't go to, pubs are dying.
Yeah.
Those environments. I think gym spaces, regular gyms are quite isolatory, aren't they?
You put your headphones
in your own space. And I mean, not that I spend a lot of time in a regular gym, but because I'm doing martial arts most of the time. But whenever I have been or had the opportunity to go, it seems like you go and you may make eye contact with somebody, but very rarely I've had a deep conversation with it.
Yeah, it's so true.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of the time you sort of go to these gyms and, you know, someone's got their headphones in, so they're sort of isolating themselves from any sort of, the only kind of communication you would have is...
And I guess everybody's filming themselves
Yeah.
now. I mean, that was never a thing when we didn't have mobile phones back in the day.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so I think obviously that culture's probably evolved.
Yeah. But it's so true, because I was even talking, like, even on the mats, where it feels like people need that social element to it, because they're like, I can really be present here. I'm not thinking about...
Well, I think a certain type of person definitely does. And, you know, I mean, you're right. You know, we are social animals, so I think we all get validation from that. And to be validated is really important, right? You know, in our frail egoic self. I mean, that's why Facebook and all that shit. Social media is so popular. It's a self-validation, sort of trying to validate this thing that doesn't actually exist.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, ooh.
Fueling that ego, that part of you that's... You think you need that, but...
Well, you do need ego to survive, but we've kind of started to worship it as a means to an end in of itself, and it takes up so much of our living time. You know,
what was it sort of about martial arts and jiu-jitsu in the beginning that really sort of captured you in that moment?
Well, I mean, I came to it from really an experience I had on this number 30 bus ride that I've mentioned to you about, where I had this kind of, I don't know, this awakening experience, this moment of nowness. And it was really about answering that question. Being a South London sort of dude, you know, I'm not a religious guy, although my primary school had some religious context to it, but it was never, my family are not religious, just, or at least I'm aware of anyway. So there was never that aspect to it. So answering that question, you know, whereas I might have gone down the Jesus route or whatever, it wasn't really. It was the time of the New Age, in fact. So crystals and tarot cards, and well, one of the first things was,
yeah.
What was the experience, if you don't mind sharing?
So I was on this bus. So the number 30 used to run from Putney to Oxford Street, and I was on this bus with my friend Annette. I was 15 or 16 at the time, and it had been snowing, and so we were on the bus. The bus has gone up to Hyde Park Corner and done a left down Park Lane, and as I've looked over Hyde Park, there was this sea of white. I mean, it was just so beautiful, and I had my Walkman with my headphones on, and the track that was playing, it was like a big old fat old Walkman, and the track that was playing was Minnie Riperton, Loving You, and it was just so angelic, and my mind, as I understand it now, didn't have a format or program for that experience, so it opened up to the experience to absorb it, and I guess to format it, to put it in as a new program, as a new bit of software, and it was just like the most real 30 seconds of my life.
It was just like download of data, like...
No data. No, it was... or I mean, there was no realization of any particular insight other than eternity. Do you know what I mean? It was a forever moment, and it was peaceful, and it was supportive, and it was just, just incredible.
Spiritual in a way.
Yeah, no, I mean, depending on how you term that word, but yeah, it was a different, like a realization. You know, the programming had dropped, and there was an interaction I feel with the present moment, or the present moment.
Do you think it was kind of like you were kind of at that point really plugged into what the what the experience is supposed to be in that way?
More decoupled from my egoic experience.
Yeah.
So it was definitely a stepping out of that boundaries that we kind of set ourselves in. So it was like, well, how do I get back to that? Because it was so phenomenal. And that just started a path of experience that's led to be sitting here right now, because it's still, it's still very a motivator for what I do. Spreading that love, trying to get people to kind of to let go maybe a little bit.
It's really, I think it's really interesting, because I think we live so much in a world where you're kind of hanging on to stuff. Do you know what I mean? I definitely feel a lot of it, you're kind of conditioned to feel like this is the only thing that you're given.
Absolutely.
And there's nothing outside of that.
I mean, there's so much social conditioning. The whole thing of the idea of, kind of freedom of choice. You don't have any choice. You're just working on programs.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? In fact, I had an experience driving to training the other day. And I've had this interaction. There was a guy on a bicycle, and he's just crossed my path. And I've kind of slowed down to let him go. And as he's crossed my path, his hand went up, and I could feel myself. My program of social reciprocation.
Yeah.
And I could feel my hand, and he's gone up and he's just pushed his hair out of the way. Do you know what I mean? So, and I can't caught myself. Right? But you see what I'm saying? So it's to that kind of that basic level that your manners, your sense of self, the way you interact with any experience is based on some prior experience.
Yeah. It's kind of like removing yourself from that intuitive mind-body connection in a way, is it? Like,
no, I think there's always kind of intuition, but the intuition will be programmed intuition. Like when I roll, now my body is because I work on quite basic principles, but those principles can then evoke themselves in quite complex ways. So instead of doing kind of standard linear technique, I'm sort of pulling, pushing, jarring you, and my hands are going out in all different directions. And you would say that's intuitive, but it's only based on the fact that I've done thousands of hours of rolling and programmed that in. So I think the programming and the selecting of the right program at the right moment is maybe what intuition is, but it's not the thing on the 30 bus that I was mentioning.
Yeah.
So it's all been kind of about trying to understand that.
So since that bus incident, what was your next steps to try to manifest the...
So as I said, there was, the whole kind of thing at the time was new age stuff, so kind of went into to looking into various books and reading and trying to understand. And then I hit Wing Chun and found my local instructor, because my dad was very big into boxing. My uncle was an Olympic gold medalist boxer. So boxing and sitting down and watching the alley fights back in the late 70s with my dad, kind of boxing into the early 80s. So boxing boxing was something, and the physicality of boxing. So martial arts seemed to be a little bit more, I don't know, kind of in that towards that Eastern mysticism vibe. So I thought, well, maybe there's answers in that. So that's kind of how I gravitated towards that. And as I say, I went on to also study hypnotherapy. I'm a qualified hypnotherapist and NLP practitioner, which again gave some phenomenal insights on this sense of self, ego thing. So it's kind of been various avenues, but I think the one that's been most enjoyable and the most functional is getting to the mat and rolling.
Do you find, like with rolling in jiu-jitsu, like it's a very instant feedback loop into sort of understanding that?
Well, the feedback loop is instant. Whether the understanding is instant, do you know what I mean? But it does take a while of accumulating skill level, but I think I mean, there's guys that go to jiu-jitsu and don't get any of the stuff done.
Yeah, of course.
Right? So we're on different goals and different outcomes. Although I can cater for those guys because the environment I go into and why jiu-jitsu is so effective is because it's honest.
Mm-hmm.
You know, or any competitive martial art.
Yeah.
To a degree, is honest within the context of its rule set. So that's where the honesty comes in. But obviously not the honesty of biting your nose off or ripping your ear off and tearing your eyeball out. You know, so which, you know, the traditional martial artists might say, oh yeah, well, you're not doing. But the competitive martial arts gives you the delivery system to be able to do all those things. You know, we agree not to bite my nose off because that's civilized, but doesn't mean you couldn't. And in fact, that you're more functional in those environments. You know, your delivery system will be more functional than I'm a street fighter.
That's how they kind of say about jiu-jitsu, that yes, we roll, but if that would be a survival fight, it would be till the death. So you tap because I mean I let you go because you tap, simply because we're in a gym. But if we would be on a field, try and fight for a piece of meat, like to survive, I wouldn't let it go.
Yeah, I mean, and what you'll find is your jiu-jitsu becomes much smaller in your application. The stuff that's game orientated doesn't really happen in a self-defense situation. You know, in fact, we had a guy at Carlson's who was good at footlocks, a footlock, and he dropped for a footlock in a bar fight and got his head stamped on. So, you know what I mean? Bad choice, bro. You know, you don't really. You know, you've got to also, when you're practicing jiu-jitsu, have the realization that you're not actually fighting. I think that's an important thing to put across. But definitely the skills that you do accumulate are functional.
I definitely find, like, with martial arts, you get what you want from it in a way. So I think when you lead with what it is that you want to gain from it, it will give it to you, whether it's...
No, you know, this kind of it's about setting the GPS, isn't it? And knowing, you know, if you want to go Manchester, it's going to take you, probably it's going to plot out the straightest route, but there are many roads to Manchester, right? So, it will kind of give you what you're intending to, but there's other junctions on that journey where you may go off and go, okay, actually that outcome's not as important anymore as you evolve yourself.
I feel like that's how it happened for me. Like when I moved to the UK, I wanted to become a singer, but then I went to an open mic and then I failed, and I was like, I need to become more confident. So the next junction was to get myself into MMA and to martial arts, and we spoke with Rupert about that the reason we are here is simply because I started doing jiu-jitsu and I met his brother Charlie, and then I met Rupert through Charlie. So jiu-jitsu, singing, reading books, Muay Thai is just junctions.
It's the path. That's your way, right? Because the path is the way. What's in front of you is the next step. You know, it's not necessarily this. If you're looking 5 steps down the road, you may not. You know, you may have cut off that path.
Do you find that sort of naturally your junctions will always change through life, but was there ever sort of moments in your jiu-jitsu like career where those junctions changed, or did you always kind of have a GPS that was like, I want to get here with my jiu-jitsu, I want to be able to...
No, I mean, I thought I was going to get purple belt and then I'd be done with it and I'd move on to something else. but it's such a brilliant game. It's so like...
addictive.
Really?
Yeah.
So it brings you back. You know, I haven't done with it yet.
Yeah.
And as I say, I can't see there's an end.
There's no end.
There's no end goal.
Hey guys, your feedback is very important. And no, this is not an advertisement. Actually, what I'm asking from you is to leave a comment below what you liked and most importantly, what you disliked about this episode, because we can improve on the next episodes and we can make a better content for you to listen. Give us also a topics you'd like to us talking about, and we can prepare, do your research and talk about it on the next episodes. Thank you.
Because I was going to say, obviously, being at the level that you're at, and they say that I read this quote somewhere where it was like, oh, your jiu-jitsu journey almost starts at black belt. Do you find
definitely?
Yeah.
Now you got your third dan, right?
This is amazing.
Yeah.
So how long you been practicing jiu-jitsu as a black belt?
9 years. So you get get your degree every 3 years. So you get the black belt after whatever time. I think what was mine, like 12 years, and then. So now I've been 9 years a black belt. So it's the longest I've been on any belt. And what they say, black belt is the longest belt. You know, you're only going to be on your white, blue, purple, brown belt for a set period of time.
Yeah.
But once you get to black belt, that's kind of forever, right? So.
And how do you feel the game and the kind of philosophy changes from white to black and then black to dan's accumulated?
I think for me it's been a case of just simplifying it, because I'm a simple person. So from the Chung, there was certain precepts from that which I found which were really again, and I'm still looking through my sense of self and trying to develop that. So. Yeah, so I think with that structure and actually looking at jiu-jitsu and trying to simplify it in such a way that I could own my own teaching, my own learning, and put it into a context where I could go to class and understand actually what was going on. I think that was really an important thing. But that kind of took to about purple belt, and then I've just been doing those basic things ever since. So I've just got good at, or I've got better at doing those basic things.
Yeah.
And that's why my guy is quite intuitive rather than prescriptive.
Yeah, so it's almost like you were saying, making those simple moves in a more complicated in a way. Like, so you're sort of keeping those simple things down, but then you're changing them to your style, your own complexities.
Yeah, because those things. I mean, the precept is posture, and the aspects of posture of base alignment, connection, pressure, balance, and awareness. You know, that is kind of really all that I'm doing. Of course, I'm looking at stuff. I'm going to class, or looking at Sensei YouTube or wherever I'm getting the information from. But I'm looking through what I'm perceiving through those filters. So, because any movement with a secondary object relies on those kind of basic precepts. So yeah, just getting good at applying that and making it more of a ride than I want to do that particular submission or that particular outcome. Yeah, it just makes it, for me, it made it more fun and more, the learning experience was much more effective, much easier to absorb that information, rather than just going, well, here's the thing, I'm going to try and do that thing, and then my training partners, I have some success, and my training partners get good at blocking me out on that thing, and I've got to then go to the counter, and then learn this series of details, and then you just overloading yourself or myself with detail. So perhaps for my learning process, it's the better way of understanding or overstanding, depending on how you perceive it, rather than just trying to accumulate these things and apply these things.
Yeah,
because that takes a lot of drilling. hundreds of hours of drilling, and people get really good that way.
Yeah.
I mean, people get much better than I'll ever get that way. But those people spend many, 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 many hours on top of their class time drilling. And not everybody has got that free time in their lives, know. So for me, it's not an efficient way. And I mean, and the people that I've met that learn well that way are really only a handful of people of the thousands of people I've met in Jiu-Jitsu. They seem to learn better, and the results I'm seeing within my group, the uptake of information, I'm like, man, how's he doing that? So my students are now, I'm plagiarizing their game because they're regurgitating the information through themselves, through their own filters, and coming up with great ideas, great shapes, great movements.
It definitely feels like there's this style of enjoying the ride and sort of having that moment of
stick the tunes on.
You're not
feel the funk.
Yeah, exactly. Where you're not so much like focusing on every minute detail of the drill, but actually just sort of enjoying the aspect of what that ride is. And I suppose you're not sort of focusing on the detail, but sort of more the awareness around it.
Yeah, because if you're in control of the ride, you'll see more opportunity to do the thing that you want to get to.
Yeah.
Right. So that's how I see it's happening. That's what I'm perceiving around me. But again, not everybody learns well. Not everybody. Most people, I feel, learn well that way. But some people come. There was a guy who came the other month from, I think he was from Canada, and it wasn't. It was a Middle Eastern boy, and he was like, "Oh, this is really weird. I don't get it." I'm like, we're not for you.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I feel for sort of that introduction into jiu-jitsu, creating that fun element of it. I don't know, for me, and I'm sure like so many people have different ways of learning things, but if you were drilling something over and over and over again, I feel like you would lose concentration in a way.
Well, I think, that depends on the individual.
Yeah.
Right. So if you've got like somebody who's very information, minutiae based, obviously that's going to be in their joy.
Yeah.
Was it Craig Jones says, was it steroids and autism? Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So those guys on that. We're all on the spectrum.
We all on the spectrum.
I'm more Down syndrome than an autistic, I feel. But do you know what I mean? So, but if you're more kind of information oriented, maybe that style of integration is the way forward. But yeah, I think most people with lives, who've got jobs and other stuff, and they don't have hours and hours and hours to drill. They get the joy of jiu-jitsu, and they're happy to come and practice. And of course, we fill in with detail. It's not like there's a lack of detail, but it's more about. Hopefully, what my students hear is the same jargon, so then they can see or perceive the connection between the fundamental connections between the drills, rather than it being this is a drill to do this, and then there's another drill to do that. So because we're given these bits of information generally in isolation for an outcome or a particular event, whereas actually it's the stuff that's the ones and zeros of the code is what's important.
Yeah.
And actually feeling that rather than having to think it through.
And like sort of when you're managing students and managing students' ego, has there ever been like a time where you've had to manage students where you found it quite difficult, or you've sort of
not really? No, I've got a wealth of customer relations service thing from hairdressing, that interpersonal thing. So, no, the general public generally, is generally good, but obviously there's some crazy motherfuckers out there as well. So, actually, I quite like these crazy motherfuckers. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
More the merrier, let's say.
Harvey.
Yeah, well, I don't say the H word, but yeah, he's not the only one. But yeah,
that message
he's
he
special.
sent yesterday.
He's a special guy.
That message he sent yesterday just cracked me up.
Yeah, asshole.
I'll just pass then. Yeah, but you get that in a gym. You get these people from all walks of life, and then I think that's the beauty, because.
And my job is not to get in the way of that.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, my job is to allow that to express itself within context of what's safe and comfortable, you know, to a degree. But
absolutely, yeah.
You know, as I say, kindness is really and although Harvey's mental, he's a very kind person.
He's a very kind person. Very kind person.
So that's, I think, where we can agree and relate. So, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So even if I tell somebody, oh, you fucking idiot, it's done with love.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's really interesting because it's like you were saying, you don't want to get in the way of their journey, because it's almost like otherwise you're restricting them from what it is that they want to learn.
We're all on our thing, right?
Yeah.
And hopefully I'm providing a context and some understanding of the sense of self and the four boils, and you know, that we go through, and that, you know, I've kind of been through some stuff myself, so and though that learning, that understanding has been really, really helpful. Really helpful.
I remember you mentioned that even though we all did jiu-jitsu at the same gym on the same mats, individually all of us had a completely different experience. So, and that I remember that really struck me, because yes, I'm dealing with different things as I'm coming on the mats, but probably Rupert dealing is completely with other things, and he sees today's jiu-jitsu is completely different from mine's jiu-jitsu today. So I was fascinating when he said that, because even though we hear, even the podcast right now, we sitting here doing the same topic, it's still kind of different for us individually.
I'm not sure what the question is.
Like, everyone will always have their different perspectives on jiu-jitsu,
even though we're doing the same thing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we go back to the ego, right? So your ego develops through. So, for instance, you come to the gym, you say, and there's 30 people in the class. They're all in the same class, but they all have different experience. So if you all ask them what happened, they'll all have a generally kind of an overview of a similar experience, but they all have individual experiences. So none of it really is based on truth. You know, it's a bit, so your ego is just an opinion. It's not real. You know, and that's really what's important for me. So get that, and so I don't have to take my issues so seriously. When I feel shit, I'm like, okay, that shit feeling's arrived. It's not me. Do you know what I mean? I'm not anger. I have anger.
Okay.
I'm not anxious. I have anxiety.
You don't have a personal attachment to any of it.
No.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, it may come on harder, and you might attach yourself, because that's what those sort of things do. They narrow yourself down to a much more narrow base of behavioural options. So your program becomes. I mean, if you watch as much people hurting each other, fighting on the internet as I do, you'll notice what happens. Well, one of the things that generally happen before somebody throws a punch, their language patterns will really minimise.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? They'll go from blah, 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 blah to, they'll just repeat the same few sentences over and over and over and over again. And at that point, you know that...
It's almost like it's kind of like coming in, shrinking down. Because like cognitively, before your brain attaches an emotion to that train of thought, there's that second... your brain is attaching an emotion to that thought, but if you're in a state of that sort of sympathetic fight or flight, everything sort of shrinks down.
Absolutely,
so your movements become a bit more rigid.
And
then it becomes a lot more emotional instead of more sort of thought behind it. in a way.
So I mean, so something like that, you know, breaking their pattern. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna fucking hit you in the face. I'm gonna fucking nice shoes. Where do you get those shoes from?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And that's really.
You completely break
Yeah,
up.
yeah. Because now you have to then open up into a different consideration. So you start breaking that trance.
It's great because it just shows how biological like humans are in that sense of
we're just computers, bro.
Yeah.
The universe is just a computer.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? We're just kind of what's the word?
I guess like a screen.
Well, more like a kaleidoscope, or like a fractal.
Yeah.
You know, we're just smaller parts of the bigger picture.
Bigger picture.
Mm.
You said that, I think you spoke with Charlie and you gave him a book that says the way you're born, it kind of sets a pattern for who you become in life.
Well, there is a book which I mentioned to him, which is called Birth Without Violence by a guy called Frederick Leboyer. And basically that book is like a, I think it was the motivator for the sort of progressive birthing, water birthing, and you know, a more kind and sympathetic environment. So the book's written from the perspective of the child being born, than the mother, or so, you know, from contextually it maps out the harrowing experience of birth.
Yeah.
And the concept really is that if you survived being born, right?
Yeah.
We're here, we're sitting here, and so we've gone beyond that experience, so we can agree that we've survived. The birth experience is the first challenge to your integrity, your physical well-being. You're kind of swimming around a sea of salty water in your mum's tummy, and then, you know, things change, and now you're being pushed through this kind of narrow canal, and so there'll be a response to that.
Mm.
So how you respond to that, I mean, in extremes you have rage and extreme anxiety, and obviously there's a bandwidth between the two. But irrespective of which end of the spectrum you're on, or you've utilised, you've survived. So your mind will generalise that as the way to survive a threat to your integrity. So whereas the rage as a child being born, or the anxiety of the child being born, is context specific, that gets generalised into the next threat to your integrity, and you just regurgitate that response because you survived.
So would you think, it's a weird question, but would you think controls that feeling? Because you don't really control how you're going to react to it. So when I was born, I asked my mom actually how I reacted when I was born. She's like, you were very calm, but I didn't really control myself to be calm in that specific situation. So who's behind it to...
That may be more an anxious experience. Do you say? So it may appear to be calm, but you may have been... Do you know what I mean? So it's your mum's eyes, but you may have been a little bit more extreme in your emotiveness in that point. Maybe. I don't know, but maybe.
So do you think it's just kind of a destiny to feel that way, and that's how you react, or there's something behind it that makes you react to it?
I think there's a will to survive, and I'm not sure why one would choose one over the other. I know it just happens, right? Then that formula becomes the formula of survival. I mean, I would see it in my dad. My dad was a very rageful person. I'd see him get out of a car and punch people in the head. I mean, but
just that kind
of... my dad had hundreds of episodes like that.
Yeah.
So who was the common denominator?
Was that normally sparked by something that was quite minute? Or,
yeah. Just like the wind changing direction. Do you know what I mean? But yeah, so I mean, I assume that he was quite rageful in his birth experience.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I believe they smacked the child. I think it was to get the breath.
Yeah.
So there's a level of that abuse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Of pain. So there would be again another motivating factor for that response.
Yeah. Can you see that in jiu-jitsu? Like,
you see it in everybody. You know, it's everybody's going through that. You know, and that's how what we're. You know, that's kind of where a lot of our difficulties come from, right? Because we've got this again. We go into our integrity being threatened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And modern day, that's less. I mean, not less, but it's kind of. You know, we're perceived. There's a lot of stress in modern city living. So those it can be activated quite consistently.
Yeah, I almost feel like it's kind of almost like prevalent in different ways than it would have been like when there was a direct threat to your survival, like thousands of years ago. Now I feel like there's threat to those survival instincts, but they're kind of different in a way.
It's more persistent, you know.
Yeah.
More stress on bills, money going out, self-image, you know, how we're all living ourselves vicariously through screens. And, you know, so, yeah, it's interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah, no, I there's always that sort of, like you're saying, that like instinct or that sort of instinct where you're sort of in a space of, I don't know, even living here in London where life is quite stressful and there's all those kind of different threats. I don't know, even in my recent sort of, like coming back to having recently started my jiu-jitsu journey, I definitely feel like there's been a bit more of like a state of awareness or less of a personal attachment to that state of threat.
Well, yeah, definitely coming to the mat and having somebody attack you.
Yeah.
Right. So your mind cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined experience and reality.
Yeah.
Right. So, and that's how phobias are kept in place. You've got the spider, but your mind sees it and amplifies it into a bigger image. It's like multi-colored. It's 50 foot high. It's got snarl. It's got dripping fangs, and this is all happening as a reaction. That's the spider's a trigger, but the psychological mental response is what's fucking with you. It's not the spider.
Yeah.
So to be activated with somebody trying to fundamentally kill you.
Yeah.
And your mind not knowing the difference between your reality and an imaginary experience. It doesn't know it's play. You're going to evoke the same responses. It's defense mechanism. So doing that several times a night, several times a week, it just normalizes that experience. So not to say you won't ever be taken out of your poise, but you know where equanimity is and how to map yourself back to it more efficiently.
Definitely. Because there's this more of this kind of calm awareness to not only to a threat, but just your general surroundings in general. I think, like you were saying, because you're more familiar in that space of what's reality and what's kind of alarming in your head.
I mean, coming here today to sit in front of a mic and chat, I've not done this before, so I could feel anxiety happening as I'm driving it, and my mind going.
Yeah.
And I'm just, but once I catch my narrowing of my perspective, then I can just observe it. I just go, okay, well, do your thing.
Yeah.
You've obviously got a need at some level to evoke that. I'll just switch the tunes on and I'll be over here having a good time. Well, where you sort yourself out, but it's okay. You'll be fine. You don't have to do this. You know, and then the conscious side then can start to parent the child.
Yeah.
One that's trying to survive.
Yeah.
You know.
We spoke in a few episodes that there's a quote in Stoicism that they say we suffer more in imagination than in reality. And I feel it's so true because there was a couple of times at my job where I kept on repeating myself that I'm gonna get sacked, where there's no evidence. Like all my managers say, oh, like, you're really great, we're really happy with you. But then as soon as I leave my job, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get sacked, I did this wrong, and I feel that's where I see the trigger is that I might did something wrong, but I amplify in my mind that
Absolutely.
yeah,
I mean, going back to the 30 bus experience,
Yeah.
right? That was really the only moment I've been clearly out of my programming. You know, you're never really out of your programming. So the idea of being in a trance is not something that's unusual. You're always in trance. Always in trance. You're never out of trance because you're always running a program. So it's just the Rupert trance or the Conrad trance or the Martin trance that's happening. But once you kind of get a handle on it, you can play with it.
Sorry, you go.
Sorry, have you ever had an opportunity to get out of the program again, or that was the only one time that you managed to get out?
It was a clear moment of spontaneous awareness. And then from there on, with development and understanding and reading and studying and playing, no, I don't think there's any real kind of clicking out. The only time you really click out of your trance is when you're in deep sleep. Right? That's going back to your source nature of no self. But I think generally, you know, the idea of being enlightened or whatever the word is, and it's not a constant state. You get a taste of it and then work with it.
Yeah, it's like you don't have any attachment to this self of I at all. You're not
over. I mean, I love myself. Right?
Yeah.
I love, integrity means that I want you to do well, but also I want me to do well. So there's that aspect of it. But as I say, with integrity, I don't really override anybody. You know, I hope you're okay as well as I'm okay. I don't know if it answers the question, but
I felt like I had a very similar experience. I'm not sure if that was similar, but for me, what happened after I've did a couple of times of psychedelics, and specifically after psychedelic experiences, like weeks after, I used to meditate. I still meditate till this day for like 10-15 minutes a day. And I was meditating, and at that point, I realized that I'm a human. I felt like, I'm like, it was like a split second, maybe a couple seconds down, like, wow, I can think, I can understand, and I have all these people around me. And I actually felt what it feels like to be a human. So I'm not sure if that was a similar experience you had, but only this time I was like, yeah, it felt like a bit out of a program, but it was just a split second, and it was a crazy experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think once you open that door, or was experience for me, you can't close it. It's undeniably true. So.
Do you feel like you're still trying to chase it in a way? That experience?
I wouldn't say chase it, because insofar as, no, I mean, I'm trying to live it, but not necessarily kind of chase it. You know, I've set my life up in such a way that I teach martial art for my living, so I can go in and do my self-development in class with my guys and girls. So I guess that's a religious experience insofar as it's repetitive. It's religiously done. But yeah, for me to say to chase it was again more of an egoic thing rather than. So I had a realization a long time ago, it's not something that you can attain by chasing it.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be somewhat spontaneous.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and some people sit on that meditation for many, many years and still don't get it. Because they're chasing it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I got it through an experience of, I would say beauty. It was such an incredibly beautiful moment that my mind didn't have a format for it, so it opened up to absorb it. You can get it through dance. You can get it through, you know, wherever you can take yourself out, or potentially. I mean, people throw themselves out of aeroplanes, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Or for bridges or whatever. I mean, I've not done that myself, but I guess the next time it's kind of less.
I definitely feel it's that
less
sort
raw, less visceral.
Exactly. Like it's that sort of like there's no beginning or end, or like even within a state of flow, it's like that you're not boxed within the vessel that makes up you physically.
So if you think about, as I mentioned, the space of deep sleep is really the only place. So where deep sleep is timeless, right? You go to that space where you're not dreaming, because if you're dreaming, you're still in your ego, and you're running a story, you know, of whatever you're dreaming about, and it's always you, right? You never dream yourself as somebody else.
It's very true.
So why not? You know, you've got creativity, but you're still perceiving yourself as the same personality in your dreams. Yeah, so kind of running that. I've just lost my train of thought a little bit. What was I on about?
So sort of like you've got in your state of dream or deep sleep, or you're sort of within a dream, you are attached to your personification of you.
Yeah, so once you go to that deep sleep space where there is no sense of self, other than you know, once you cut awake, you know you've been asleep. You've kind of been there, but there's no time-based experiences. You know, it could be a moment, it could be several hours, right? So that's it. So if you want to go to sleep, can you go there now? You've done it. You've practiced it many, 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 many times. Can you go to? And we've all experienced that difficulty of sleeping, right? Because the mind's overrunning. So, yeah, if it was that easy to just switch on and off to a sort of a free flowing state, you know, it's kind of like trying to get back to sleep. But so you have to allow yourself to drift into that area. Do you know what I mean? You kind of have to go through. You go to sleep first, and your mind does the processing of whatever has gone on in the day, the dreaming aspect, those crazy adventures that you have. And then you hit a period of time of deep sleep where there's no interactions, no dreaming. So if you could do that in real time.
That's where we'd want to. Do you think sort of like studying an art form that allows you to sort of get into a state of flow allows you to have more of those experiences like that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a more expansive mind, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think with the martial art particularly, because it evokes that fear-based reaction, and you kind of having to then set up a observation post, you know, because you've got to. So you have to then develop that, right? Because initially it's like, it's going to kill me, get up.
Yeah.
You know, but then you understand that there's a system of stuff that's going. So you have to then come back, break down the emotive stuff, and become more neutral and more analytical. I think that's helpful.
Because I was thinking, like, even in like a form of state where you're asleep, essentially, like you're in a vulnerable state of mind, right? especially to sort of you as a person, because you're not in control of your environment at that point. So if you're getting more comfortable with sort of being in a situation that is tough per se, it's maybe if you're in a more of a relaxed frame of mind, by getting more comfortable with uncomfortable, it allows you to disconnect more often than not, or more often than others. And it's just a theory, but
yeah, I mean, I think it helps you to manage and be more reflective.
Yeah.
But it's a slightly different thing to that thing.
Yeah.
Number 30 was for sure.
Yeah. No, it's so interesting. I mean, I personally haven't had. I mean, I've had sort of like psychedelic experiences, but I've not had something where I felt completely where time doesn't exist, or had that.
They didn't have enough.
Maybe not.
Well, that's the thing, right? So, I mean, I've spoken to a lot, because I've been wondering, like, DMT, right? So,
yeah,
if you do DMT, is it you, or is it the DMT, or do you
exactly,
come to a more clear perception? And everybody that I've spoken to who's kind of experimented in that direction, it's still them. You know.
But most of them, they experience the same almost experience within the. I never tried DMT. I tried it once, but I didn't really feel anything. So I didn't really experience what I've seen people on the internet talking. But most of the people experience the entities, and they giving you the lessons. And most of the people say like they look like that, and it kind of, all of them kind of paints an accurate picture of how it looks like. So is it the DMT, or is it something that...
Well, I mean, having asked the questions, I think it's the DMT rather than... I mean, sorry. It's kind of social constructs and expectations, and obviously the state that you go into. I think that you'll find that it's your mind and the drug interacting.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that it's amazing experiences. I'm sure
it seems like it. People say,
because like even with sort of like shamanistic practices of like ayahuasca, there definitely seems to be like reasons why people would sort of go into those ceremonies, is to either sort of confront maybe difficulties that they've had, but they like you say, they have this sort of experience that's very personal, where they're going into an experience where it's them. It's not something where it's connected to I mean I've not done it, but it seems to be sort of hearing people talk about those experiences when they've gone into those realms. It seems to be them in the experience, not the experience itself, or connecting with the divine of the experience.
Yeah, but like Conrad said, it may be. I mean, not because I don't know, but maybe it's not. Never enough DMT. Maybe.
Maybe it's just got to be a bigger hit. Who knows? No, but it's really interesting. I mean, I've always wanted to try it at some point. Maybe see.
It seems like they're doing these. What's it called? Scientific researches that they put you into a DMT world for like an hour. So you're there and they kind of try to explain what does it mean and where it comes from, and because apparently we all have DMT in our bodies, like in the pineal gland, yeah. So, and it's like not all, but many plants and animals has it as well. So it's kind of part of who we are, and they say like when you die, you kind of release DMT, and that's the experience you're getting.
Yeah, the transition between.
Yeah. So yeah, it's quite fascinating. I'd like to try one day, but in a proper environment, I guess.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I mean, just coming for me, obviously the Jiu-Jitsu is more functional and it's more available, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's less scary, I feel, than doing something like that.
It's also, I think, with like Jiu-Jitsu, I found that you're not so there's thought elements to it, but it's such a feel thing, and you're kind of it feels like your brain or your thoughts in your legs or your arms. It doesn't even really seem to be in the head. And it's totally on that. Like you leave, I wouldn't even say you'd need to open your eyes at times because it's all feel and weight and balance and distribution. And
yeah, I agree.
I think when you're constantly in that frame where you're not thinking, you're sort of thinking all basis of the environment in a way. It's like kind of almost like how an octopus would see with its tentacles in a way. Like that's how at least I've experienced.
And I totally agree. I think that the more you can feel it, I mean, of course, you need some element of mind application to gather the fundamental movements. But then once you've got that, and then you start putting pressure testing it and adjusting it and kind of evolving it on depending on who you're working with, because you both of you would be somewhat different in experience to roll with. So the sensibility would be somewhat different. So really coming back into one's poise and being somewhat neutral rather than having too much intention of where it's going to go.
Yeah.
Again, I think going for the ride of the roll is really where the fun starts. And actually then that gives you control of the scramble, which is kind of, for me, the most important aspect of it. Because without that control, you don't get to do what you want to do anyway.
Because it's that sort of level of offense, defense, and then scramble in the middle.
Yeah.
And sort of what I imagine what points to play in that sort of offensive and defensive position, but it comes from controlling the scramble in a way that allows you to be in either of those two positions.
Sometimes you got to know when you've got to fold your hand.
Yeah.
And then reconnect somewhere else. Give up on that connection because the other guy's got more control. He's winning that experience. So rather than pouring more resources in that, I'm better off just going somewhere else.
Yeah.
Just allow him to have that.
Yeah.
And then, but set up a shape where it actually becomes redundant and maybe used against him, that the situation he's trying to evoke. So kind of be able to let go and flow. It's kind of really what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We keep coming back to that, really.
When you were sort of learning from Dickie, was some of his teachings in sort of understanding that, or was that sort of from your own realizations in general?
No, that's my own realizations,
Yeah.
I mean...
do you think he teaches a completely different type of jiu-jitsu, not in terms of as an art, but just the philosophy behind it? Or he's kind of the same, in the same sort of realm? No,
I mean, I think he comes from a different place. I would say a different place. His life experience has been completely different. So his questions have been, and why he's come to jiu-jitsu is somewhat different. I think he got involved with jits via Simon and what's his face?
The Brazilian.
No, the Guy Ritchie.
Oh, yeah.
Because Guy Ritchie was training on the film sets, and Simon was working with Guy Ritchie. And I think Guy introduced Simon to. So, I think it was more by luck and finding something really fantastic to do, which suited their characters and the type of guys they were.
Yeah.
It's really interesting when you sort of like when you have your own set of intention and questions coming into jiu-jitsu, your perspective and style kind of, I feel really shapes that.
Ooh.
In a way, because like we were saying, sort of the intent behind what it is that you want to learn from martial arts will really shape
the GPS that. where you're you set your kind of outcomes where you want to get to.
I suppose stylistically that also really changes.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, again, those two, Dick and Simon's games are completely different.
Yeah.
And my game is completely different to my Dickie's game.
So do you think that the personality has a lot to do with what sort of game
definitely
you have?
Yeah, your character, your life experience, the way you ask and answer questions. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, I think just your reactions to things on a whole, right? Would have like, even with me and Charlie that are very similar as twins. I honestly can feel the difference in, because Charlie's perspectives on things will be a lot different to my perspectives on things, even in life, even though inherently we've had very similar upbringings. Even just talking to each other about our perspectives on our own parents are so different, and
that's what I was saying earlier, right?
Yeah.
So 30 people in the class,
yeah,
they've all had a different experience.
Yeah.
Although it's the same event, but their experience of that event is somewhat different.
Yeah.
So who's right? All of them. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
From their point of view, they're all right.
Yeah.
10 black belts, 1 armbar, 10 different sets of details. Obviously, it'd be over that, but one will have maybe an incentive on some aspect of that process. Who's right? All of them. If they're making it work. Whether it's right for you as a student, that's something different. But for me, I hope to give my guys my perspective of it, but also give them the tools to question what I'm doing and improve themselves. Make it even better than what I'm doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
My approach on jiu-jitsu is, as I say, kind of fundamental. Whether I'm a good example of that, I don't know. I hope my students will pick it up. I didn't start jiu-jitsu till I was 34, right? So if I give those same principles to an 18-year-old and they're running with those ideas for longer, then I hope they would be better at it through applying from a better physicality to start with. And hopefully as they get a little bit older, the maturity and their awareness and their ability to make decisions with integrity, So I would hope to see better examples of jiu-jitsu coming out of and I am, just kind of watching you guys. Little Camille.
Yeah.
How does she deal with that?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Isn't it?
And she's really good.
She's really, really lovely. She's really fantastic. It's, with that level of talent, if she's worse than me, I wouldn't be doing a very good service.
Yeah.
Because she's definitely got more talent, raw talent than a lot of people I've met. Do you know what I mean? So, it's just, it's an open source concept rather than it's not closed. It's not a defined situation of this is the outcomes that you're going to receive.
Yeah.
That's for you to explore and evolve.
It's really lovely because it's so open to interpretation, but it's on your part, it's such a selfless thing to give in that way, because fundamentally, I imagine sort of like as a teacher, you're sort of passing on your knowledge, but you're also saying, take it and improve it and have your own sort of thoughts on it in a way.
I really hate it when Dickie teaches how to destroy the half guard. I'm like, man, don't be telling that shit.
Yeah.
But no, of course, you want it to. You can only be honest.
Yeah.
If you're not honest, then it's going to bite you in the ass. At some stage.
I think that's one thing that really gripped me straight away was how honest you kind of have to be in it. There's no hiding behind that barrier. At the end of the day,
that's really the point of what I was saying about competitive martial art and having a sparring, kind of event where you get to practice with real resistance, real timing, Do you know what I mean? I mean, if within a safety context, but still it's getting as close to a reality as possible. So you have a dynamic application and understanding rather than just a theoretical. I mean, you could talk about, I mean, we've all seen it on the internet, the guys throwing their chi balls and spinning people through the air. And, you know, maybe theoretically that's possible, but walking through that wall is theoretically possible. I've not seen many people able to apply that theory. So I think if you start with dishonest questions, you can find yourself in a really bad place. You know, you can fool yourself. You know, lie to me, but never lie to yourself. Because if you start believing it, you'll be in trouble. You know, and that's part of the problem. People just fool themselves. And I think that's really, as a self-development system, that's why I think Jiu-Jitsu is really functional. The fact that we're being punched in the face out the process, so you don't have such an immediate, visceral, emotive reaction where you've gone from calmness to 100% rage, and there's a progression towards rage in Jiu-Jitsu, right? So you can step it down, step yourself off of that emotional thing as you become more and more self-aware, emotionally self-aware. I mean, not to say I never lose it.
Of course.
But when I do lose it, particularly if I see myself repeating the same phrase over, I'm like, fuck it. I'm minimizing myself here. I've got to break my own trance. Like the guy the other day, you know, I felt my hand come up and I caught myself within that break. I recognized there was a reaction being fired. So I didn't quite look so foolish waving to this guy.
Yeah.
He's just like stroking his hair back. Bastard. He almost got me.
He almost did. Yeah, hold it down. Get into a Kimura.
Sitting on my hands. Yeah, you know, it just makes life really interesting. For me, anyway.
Yeah, absolutely.
You have an interesting way of, I learned that from you, that identity manifests into your behavior, and then behavior into identity into beliefs into behavior.
Yeah, beliefs and values.
Yeah. Could you just expand on it a bit more, and why do you think this is? Because some people say beliefs comes before identity, right? Or is that?
Well, beliefs and values are your identity. Yeah.
Okay.
So your beliefs and values again are your filters for your behavior. You know, so people will hold on to their beliefs doggedly in spite of evidence. They're not functioning. And I hope that, you know, one can become more open to the fact where, you know, there's that where there's a challenge to your belief system to actually be able to be aware enough to be able to self-reflect and go, maybe that's right. You know, maybe they are. I need to do a little more research into that. But yeah, I mean, your beliefs and values are generally inherited from your family system and your teachers, your schooling, your upbringing, you know, your social programming.
Yeah. And how would you, if you want to change your result, how would you go about changing your identity or beliefs?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, if you want, I mean, to change your identity, then you've got to evolve your beliefs and values. So first of all, you've got to acknowledge there's an issue, right? Otherwise, where do you start? And then I think defining what your outcome is, set your GPS. So again, we're going into hypnosis and self-hypnosis now. So we're starting to reprogram our minds. Yeah, so just defining what you want, where you want to be, the types of behaviours that you require to get success in your goals. and then feeding that back to yourself, you know, and feeding them for what the behavior requirements are, and then take it into your imagination, dream on it, you know, just kind of visualize, yeah, and also talking, you know, just your auditory aspect is something that's really important. You know, having supportive, language within yourself. Yeah. Identifying that.
Affirmations, you mean? Or that's
not necessarily. I mean, affirmations can be helpful, but just having a positive perspective of yourself.
Yeah.
And feeding back. So if you want to become boxing world champion, right, you've got to go to the gym and train.
You can't just shout information.
Yeah, you can't. You can't just study it in your.
I'm the world champion.
Yeah. So you got to go.
Yeah.
But you might to go to the gym, you got to perceive yourself being there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So perceiving yourself in the gym and training your mind to not only be there, but the quality of your time there is really important.
Would you say like a lot of sort of within hypnosis, it's sort of only there once it's sort of backed by action in a way?
What do you mean by there?
Because like, if you think about sort of like hypnosis or sort of retraining the mind in a way of things that you want to achieve, would you say that sort of that's only going to inherently stick in your mind as long as you're sort of producing those actions in which you want
to? I think by intending it and being belligerent with your application is really important. So till you've got the results you want, you keep plying back and adjusting your. I mean, you might write a script. You might write an analogy of what you want, and then within that you start to process that story in yourself, and you perceive yourself in that way. And if you start to self-doubt that, then you've got to then parent yourself through that and back to the supportive aspect of yourself. I mean, the idea of hypnosis and trance, we are never out of trance. So, you know, that whole thing of close your eyes and listen to my voice, and it's just it's a parlor trick, really. Because you're always in your mind, so you're always able to take the reins and guide that horse to where it wants to go. But I think writing it down and having it in a concise script or description, which you can come back and just reread and then feed that consistently to yourself. And then after a period of time, you know, you might adjust that to, okay, didn't quite, I've got some movement, but I may need to adjust such and such. And then you start adding to that.
It's sort of like that junction changing on that sort of GPS in a way.
Yeah.
You're just...
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that your behaviour, your beliefs and values and your actions are automatic, right? So they're a program. Realizing that they're not giving you the right results is you're looking back on your results and you're seeing the results. So there's an aspect of you that's able to review and therefore adjust, or at least not be happy with the results. So you want a different outcome. So there's a part of you that can perceive that, and then will know whether you've gained those results or not. And then, as I say, then it can start adjusting. But if you just try and do it without defining it, it's really tough.
Yeah.
Because it's just a little bit in free fall, and you need to apply the same context over a short period of time. They reckon 28 days.
Really?
For your mind to take up a new program.
So it's almost like like a new habit.
Yeah.
I say. Yeah. Is there any reason why it's 28 days, or is that just how the mind?
I think it's just been found to be that. There's a book called what's that book called? I think you bought it.
Atomic
Kybalion?
No. The self-hypnosis book. Psycho-Cybernetics, Maxwell Maltz.
Oh, that's Joe. I think Joe bought it.
Joe bought it.
Yeah.
And in that's kind of the self-hypnosis Bible.
Okay.
And that's where it's stated in that 28 days.
I have to give it a read. Have you read it?
No, I think Joe read it. Psychobernetics.
Yeah, he was Maxwell Maltz. He was some sort of plastic surgeon in the 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And he was noticing that he was doing these surgeries, but people's sense of themselves didn't change with their outward image.
No way.
So then he kind of developed his theories and wrote this book about how to change people's self-image.
Yeah.
Because you kind of see yourself different if you change the image in your mind. As an example, when I moved to the UK, I didn't feel confident, but as I was doing martial arts, I kind of equipped myself with confidence in a way, and I managed to feel like, I'm capable of things. And naturally, I was looking in the mirror.
So your
values
values
a different person,
change. So therefore, your beliefs of yourself change. So your behavior changes.
Because you look at yourself differently, right? Like the more that you sort of, at least how I can relate to that, is that the more that you sort of have that less of a self-limiting belief of yourself, and the more that sort of you create that self-image that you're sort of affirming within your mind, you look at yourself in a different way.
Yeah, well, you could, because with the filter change.
Yeah, yeah.
So your perception of yourself changes. So, and that's where you may then go, okay, I need to adjust it. Okay, I'm not quite getting the result I thought I'd get in this direction. I need to evolve it. But yeah, it's a really powerful tool.
Yeah.
So if you would put actionable tips on how to change your identity, what would be like 5 or I don't know how many tips that a person has to do every single day to achieve that result, wanted result?
Well, I think you got to write a script. You got to write a definition. That definition wants to be in the positive, like rather than I don't want. You want to be going, this is how I want it to be. So because your mind doesn't recognize negation.
Is it I am that person or I'd like to be that person?
You might start with I want to be like this, because I am might be a bit. It
Too
might
much.
it might feel like what's the word, like a fraud.
Imposter.
So that's imposter syndrome. So there's that level of self-doubt will always, because there's the emotional block. So be kind, be progressive, but be positive. And then it's consistency and being persistent with it.
So just meditate every single morning, evening, doesn't really matter.
Whatever suits you. I don't think I think, as I said, once you start getting on that path, and the more you're consistent with, so the first week, your program is starting to embed itself. Second week, you're starting to understand what's required, and it just starts to, no effort's really required other than sitting and. I mean, you might put it on a tape and feed it back to yourself. You might just read the script before you drop in. Maybe even just read it before you go to sleep. Allow your dreaming to do a bit of the heavy lifting for you.
Do you think there's definitely something to be said for that sort of unconsciousness sort of...
Oh, everything's unconscious, man.
Yeah.
I mean, as a jiu-jitsu guy, I'm not fighting consciously. I'm studying consciously. But my body's doing jiu-jitsu. My mind's sort of working on the next problem or the next piece of skill I need to require. It's not dealing with the skills I've already got, because that will evoke itself.
Yeah.
I don't do jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu does me.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It makes total sense. Because
it's also a muscle memory, because like you kind of running on a program, right? So
yeah, and absolutely. But then again, that's part of the program.
Yeah.
I mean, similar to training, right? You come to the gym, you start doing jits. It may take 3 or 4 months before you get an understanding of what the game's about, and then getting the tools to make yourself. Defensive tools to make yourself effective, so you can survive, and start seeing opportunities to do more than survival. But yeah, there's an initial space of just getting it together and just being dogged to turn up to class. And I hope that the environment easier for my guys and girls to turn up to. Yeah, it's a little bit like that.
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I fucking love it. Really do. And yeah, I know you do too.
No?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, we've got a really... Well, I'm blessed that we've got such a lovely group of people.
Yeah.
But I guess, again, it goes back to the leader of the whole group, because...
I insist on kindness.
Yeah, because if that would be... as an example, something changes and I'm becoming the top of the Carlson Gracie, it would be completely different. I'm not saying I will become, but if that would be a completely different...
Put it in your program.
Yeah.
Put it down.
Yeah.
It will be a completely different person. Naturally, different people would start to come to the gym.
Yeah, at the end, the kind of the... you're going to set the vibe.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I hope that to show authentic jiu-jitsu. I mean, I've been through the meat grinder of the early 2000s Carlsons, where it was brutal. I mean, I started actually at London Shoot Fighters, which was not even more brutal, just as brutal, because, the game of jiu-jitsu was really new to the UK. So people were just doing kind of what they thought they were doing. But yeah, now the art of jiu-jitsu is kind of, you see much more open and more artistic application of it. Because, we're not just kind of trying to tear each other's arms and ears.
Yeah, it's not this like rigid sort of...
But, I mean, it was fantastic back in the day, tough training.
Yeah.
And just keeping yourself motivated to turn up and keep going with it. But then my GPS was set to keep going.
Yeah.
That's it.
It wasn't about tapping out that guy or that guy. It was about, just accumulating the skill set so I can keep pursuing my goal of understanding that experience.
I was just going to say, do you feel like you were sort of looking far beyond, you were just sort of not necessarily like focusing on the win or any sort of, it's almost like you're...
Was there ever a goal to achieve like a black belt, or that was
no,
far beyond achieving belts?
Whenever...
Is that what you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's almost like you were saying, you just took the expectation out of it in a way.
Yeah.
You were just going for the...
Yeah, no, I mean, because just turning up was I was already established from the Chung stuff in throughout the 80s and early to late 90s. So I had a habit of going to training anyway. But yeah, I think... I think just pursuing the experience for the sake of it. I mean, I just enjoyed the training on top of anything else. I mean, the first grappling class I did, I was like, man, I mean, I never went back to the Chung after that, because it was just so visceral and so much fun. but yeah, I've kind of developed my own perspective on it. And as I say, really is about this kind of self-development vibe. With authentic jits and authentic skills, and hopefully my coaches are proud of what I'm doing.
I'm sure they are.
Totally, yeah. I think I feel so sort of, there's this definite immediate sort of, kind, loving sense that you get at the moment that you walk into your gym, for sure. And
not when they step on a mat.
Not when they step on the mat. There's definitely that element.
Well, when you put your shoes in my motherfucking mats, I'm like,
I've seen it first.
I've heard.
I've heard it as well. Yeah.
No, but it's. I can imagine sort of like when you're sort of talking about sort of London street fights back in the day, how tough that would have been. Was there any point at that time where it was a struggle, or was it always fairly easy to turn up? Did you ever sort of go through any self-doubt or anything like?
No, because it's what it's what I was. Again, I guess beliefs and values give you a behaviour, and I wanted this particular understanding, and it just seemed to be pursuing that understanding. So there wasn't really any choice, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
it was so much part of me, of who I perceive myself to be. Maybe trying to get away from who I perceive myself to be, to evolve myself beyond that, because I know there's a potential of a and much more creative expression. So I think it's kind of it carried itself from having the program in there, and I think that's what those sort of things do to you as a drug addict is programmed to find support from the drugs. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously they're doing drugs for a reason.
For them to express, or
more possibly get away from the pain of whatever their life experience is given. So if you believe life is pain, then maybe that's the way you manage it. So maybe it isn't so much of a choice as a thing of survival, coping. Unfortunately, I have never had to go through those. I've been blessed in that way, and I've had the bandwidth to develop myself towards those, positive outcomes. I mean, I can't really say it's an addiction, jiu-jitsu or martial art, but
it's quite addictive.
Oh no, I mean it is addictive, but it's I think the benefits, the upside to it are really a bit. And actually, coming to this space, even with my life problems, where my ex-partner was very unwell, dealing with that, and house fire, dealing with that. Jits was just constant all the way through, and it was a way to go somewhere, go to the mat, get my clarity of mind, get my mind off of those problems, and it was just really, 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 really supportive and really helpful.
We were talking on an episode beforehand, before this episode, that I think Daniel as well, Black Dan, MMA Dan.
Oh yeah, Dan Myers.
Yeah, Dan Myers. That's it. He said as soon as I step on the mats, all my worries are gone, and it's just so accurate.
It's because he's stealing my socks. That's why. You know that.
Is he stealing your socks?
You know he's got my socks. I went. Dan Taylor. We had a party, right? And I went there it was a year or so ago. And I turned off, and everybody's got their shoes off. And I got my Asda socks on, and they've got like they're sold in pairs with green toes and yellow toes and red toes and blue toes, and I'm not really organised, so I just pick out whatever socks. So I got a pair of, I don't know, red and yellow on, say, for instance, man. And I had maybe the red on my right foot and the yellow on my left foot. That motherfucker got there, took off his shoes, and he had a red and yellow. And I'm like, see, I knew it.
Well, that sounds like that. Man.
Yeah, it sounds. I'm sure he's nicking my sock. I'm sure he's
that's the way he comes
sneaking in, mate.
Yeah.
All of his problems are solved.
All his worries are gone.
He's just like, I've got holes in my socks, better go back for some more.
I love him, mate. He's such a lovely guy, that boy.
He's amazing.
Lovely guy.
He's really sweet. Yeah, I remember talking to him, and he sort of said something in passing where he was like, this year's been tough and challenging, because we were both kind of talking about this year, and he was like, but the mats are always here. I think there's always that support.
Yeah.
And it feels like that.
Yeah, just I said that kind of visceral sparring, whether it's striking, whether it's wrestling, whether it's submission wrestling or whatever, you can't be anywhere else than trying to deal with that guy trying to choke you unconscious, or punch you in the face repetitively. So you're more into that moment. There's more of you available.
I just remember the thing he said before we started rolling. He's like, "If you tap me, you racist."
He's an asshole, that guy. What an asshole.
But yeah, that was beautiful. That was beautiful. I really appreciate, Coach, for you coming.
Are we done?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.
If people want
so
to
much
learn
fun.
more about your work or what you do, join Jiu-Jitsu gym, where they can find you.
What's it? BJJ, South London, Carlson Gracie Clapham. Oos! Come and see us.
Perfect. Thank you so much
Come
for
and hang
coming.
out.
Yeah.
Feel the vibe.
That was awesome.
That was amazing.